One summer afternoon, Alva was walking home. When passing through a small forest, Alva seemed to hear a strange noise coming from the woods, like the sound of a beast. Alva stopped and listened for a while. He heard the wolf howling, though it was quiet, he was sure. Alva hurried to the house. At that moment, there was another girl's cry in the jungle in the same direction as the wolf's cry just now. Alva was shocked. He pulled out the hatchet at his waist and ran into the woods. Soon, he saw a little girl in a white dress running in front, and several wild wolves were about to surround her. Alva, who had studied martial arts, sped up to the girl as soon as he saw it. He wanted to save people first. What puzzled Alva was that the girl ran towards the wolves. Seeing that the girl was getting closer to the wolves, Alva couldn't stop it. Suddenly, 4 wild wolves ran toward Alva and instantly surrounded Alva. They looked at Alva fiercely. Before Alva could react, the girl told the wolves not to hurt him and told them to go back. After the few wild wolves heard it, they all retreated quietly. The 4 wild wolves were lying beside the girl. The girl stepped forward and stroked the wolf's head for a while, as if praising an obedient child. The girl was called Liz and lived on the grassland. The area was flat with a meandering river, like an earthworm on the endless grasslands. Farmers on the grasslands lived on hunting and herding for generations. At that time, the living conditions of the herdsmen improved, so they built pastures. Liz's ranch was the largest in the area. Unlike a few decades ago, due to the regulation of hunting, there were more wolves in the mountains, and countless cattle and sheep were eaten by wolves every year. At that time, in order to fight against those wild wolves, the herdsmen thought of many ways. One of the most common and effective methods was digging traps. But anyway, the number of wolves is increasing. There was a competition between wolves, so when the prey on the mountain was hunted by them, they came down the hill to attack the cattle and sheep. Unlike the fighting between ethnic groups, it was a huge risk for them to go down the mountain to hunt cattle and sheep, because the herdsmen's traps were everywhere, and they could not prevent them all. A wolf pack usually consisted of a dozen to 20 sheep. So, sometimes they caught 2 sheep, but several wolves died. Gradually, the hatred between the herdsmen and the wolves deepened. It snowed heavily in the winter of 2017, and the sky suddenly darkened. Liz followed her father and drove the sheep home. Back home, her father counted the flock. He frowned because 2 sheep were missing. He wondered where the 2 sheep were. Her father picked up the bow and arrow, told Liz to stay home, and went out looking for the 2 sheep. Half an hour later, her father came back with 2 sheep following him. Liz saw her father carrying a large suitcase. She stepped forward and looked at it and was immediately very happy. She said the dog was so cute. Her father told her that it was not a dog, but a wolf. Liz was stunned. For a moment, she didn't know the difference between a wolf and a dog. She just thought this wolf cub was cute. Her mother came over after hearing it. Seeing the box in her husband's hand, she knew what he wanted to do, but she still expressed her concern. She thought that the wild nature of wolves was difficult to eliminate. What if they regained the wolf nature and hurt their daughter in the future? They had only 1 daughter after 10 years of marriage, and they loved Liz so much that he stood by his point of view. But after their daughter was frightened by a large black bear when she was 3 years old, she was afraid to approach strangers and became autistic. They thought about a lot of ways, and finally the man decided that he would take Liz with him every day when he was herding sheep, to let her have more contact with nature and play with animals and hope that she would be happier. This approach paid off a few months later, especially a few days ago, when this man took Liz out to play. Liz was very envious of the neighbor's dog, so when he was looking for sheep just now, he found 5 wolf cubs in the bushes. They were just a few days old and were screaming with hunger. Their mother died by their side. Looking at the poor little wolf cubs, the man remembered Liz's expression when she saw the puppy a few days ago. So he decided to take them home. As he expected, after seeing the little wolf cub, Liz's inner world changed completely. For children with autism, loving and being loved was a key factor in change. Liz looked at these little wolves waiting to be fed, and the first thing she did was run back to her room and take out a large pile of beef jerky. She tore up a few pieces of jerky and put them in the mouths of the wolf cubs. Her father smiled and said that these little wolf cubs were only a few days old and could only drink milk, and they would not be able to eat meat until a month later. After he finished, he went to milk the goat. Liz followed her father closely, watching him milk the goat. She wanted to learn quickly and milk the cubs herself. When the goat's milk was ready, her mother took out 2 small bowls and put the goat's milk in the mouths of the cubs. Liz was delighted watching the cubs drinking milk. Her father said that since she had decided to keep them, it was her responsibility to take care of them. Liz nodded earnestly, and she said she would take good care of them. Her mother said she was the one who protected them then, and they'll protect her later. Liz got excited and asked her mom if it was true. With what she said, no one would dare to bully her, including bears. Her father fondly stroked her head. Their family laughed happily. Over the next few months, Liz made good on her promise and became a nanny for the wolves. She fed them, bathed them, and even slept with them. When the cubs were 2 months old, her father retrieved the ball that Liz played with as a child from the warehouse. So the cubs and Liz played a football game on the grass. Liz's smile made the whole world so beautiful, like a blooming flower. After a year, cubs had grown into big wolves and were taller than Liz. But to Liz, they were always the wolves. One day, Liz followed her father to the ranch. Once the flock was settled, Liz kept begging her father to take her to the river to catch fish. The fish in the river was the most delicious in the season when the snow and ice were melting. Liz liked to eat grilled fish made by her mother the most, so under coquettishness, her father reluctantly agreed to her. They took a net and went to a shallower section of the river, where they put the net down and enjoyed the sun by the river. Liz was delighted and kept bouncing around the river. Her father joked that the fish were scared away by her. In order to eat the grilled fish made by her mother that night, the active Liz sat quietly beside her father, looking bored at the blue sky and white clouds. Half an hour later, her father went to the river to look at the nets, but there was no catch. He took Liz to the upstream to prepare to take the initiative. Her father picked up 2 large rocks from the shore and told Liz with action. Then threw the boulder vigorously upstream, and the water splashed high. The fish was frightened and ran downstream. Liz followed his example and threw a few rocks. Together, they drove the fish downstream. Seeing the 2 fish hanging in the net, her father went down the river happily. Liz continued on the shore with a net bag. Accidentally, the fish slipped out of her father's hands, and Liz subconsciously bent over to fish. As a result, instead of catching fish, she fell into the water. The river was only 1 meter deep, but the current was fast. Liz, who couldn't swim, struggled to take a sip of water. At that time, her father was separated from her by a fishing net. He stretched out his hand but could not reach her, so she had no choice but to go ashore first. By then, Liz had been rushed 50 meters away. Seeing Liz being carried away farther and farther, her father stomped his feet in a hurry. Although the river was not deep, there were many large stones in the river. If she collided, the consequences would be disastrous. At that time, the wolf cubs who heard the cries in the distance immediately arrived in less than half a minute. 3 wolves jumped into the river. They formed a line of defense in the river to save Liz. They bit Liz's collar and quickly swam to the shore. Liz's father quickly pulled Liz up. Fortunately, she just drank a few sips of water, but was still awake. After that incident, every time Liz went out, the cubs accompanied her. Liz's flock had the highest survival rate when sheep were herded every day. 5 wolves 2 meters high stood guard at the periphery like gods of war. Ordinary wolves did not dare provoke them. Even if they encountered a big black bear, they would warn in advance. After Liz went to school, they took turns waiting for her in the woods, and they became Liz's bodyguards.